I've spent the last few days trying to rack my brain thinking of reasons why Muppets Most Wanted was not as well received and loved as the 2011 Muppets reboot movie, and why the Muppets Most Wanted didn't greenlight the next film to be made, and instead we got a TV show that got cancelled, and things sort of went downhill a bit. And I'm wondering, what sort of caused this? Maybe why wasn't this as easy as a movie to love for the general public? As a Muppet fan, and I think most Muppet fans would agree, it's probably a better Muppet film. It's quite fun, actually, and has some really good moments between the characters compared to the 2011 film, but there was just something about it that didn't seem to click with the general audience. And I've done some research, done some things, and I've got a list of things that I'm going to talk about today to decide why it wasn't quite as easy to love, and why the Muppets Most Wanted seemed a little bit unwanted at times. Okay, so it's 2014, we've just got this new film. It's called Muppets Most Wanted. I saw it in the cinema when I was a young child, and it was my first Muppet film I ever saw, and my last one that I ever saw in a theatre. It was so special. And it came out, and it has a slightly different vibe about it. It's British director, he done some amazing stuff with the Muppets, but it just had a different feel, okay? And I'm going to break down why that was. Now, the 2011 film before was wildly more successful with Jason Segel, but it also had a happy-go-lucky, everything's happy, and not that much of an evil source could really destroy the Muppets. It sort of felt like, oh, it's a lovely world, there's a real story behind this, but, you're watching the film and you're not like, oh, what's gonna happen next? You sort of, in the back of your mind, is, oh, it's a happy, more family-based film, and it's all gonna be fine in the end. That's the vibes we got from that film, in my opinion. It was all very happy, the colours were bright, the sets were beautiful, there was no dismal, disgusting, not very nice to look at sets, but this tone changed in the next film. Muppets Most Wanted kind of went the other way. It kept the musical style and, the bursting into song, but, sort of thing that they did in the 2011 film, but with the sets especially, and the puppets, the costumes, the way that the cinematography was done, it seems a lot more dark, a lot more dismal, and a little bit more dirty and grungy. And there's a realistic element to it. Now, something we should point out, and it's people have pointed this out before, is one of the first things we get in Muppets Most Wanted is them making a joke that the 2011 film was just it was an act that was put on. That probably annoyed quite a lot of people who loved that film, because it was the biggest film that the Muppets had for just forever. So for them to literally in the first 5 minutes of the next film just go, oh, we paid these people to be here sort of as a joke, these weren't real fans, because the whole point of that film was they were regaining their fan base. And yeah, Muppets Most Wanted just sweeps that away in about 10 seconds into the film. So that probably annoyed people at first, and it kind of sets the film in this state of they're still irrelevant in the public eye. And it's an interesting way to kick off the film. And this sort of tone kind of just hovers there in the background for the whole movie. Now, it's an interesting film. It's yes, it's still got the song and dance, it's still got the characters, it's still got the flashy costumes, but there's a different tone to this. The score makes it feel different. We start off by seeing Constantine in the Gulag. There's lots of differences. The sets are something I really want to touch on. The sets are so different to the 2011 film. They are dirty. They are, they're just old-fashioned looking. It looks like the Muppets and just places that we haven't really seen them before. And it's quite, in some cases, not in all, but in some cases, it's a little bit unsettling to see the Muppets in such weird, horrible looking conditions, in theatres that are falling apart, or, in a freezing gulag, full of prison people. So there's a weird unsettled feel that you get just from looking at it. You don't even have to have the Muppets say or do anything unsettling. It just looks a little bit unsettling. So that's one thing that sort of remains in the background the whole time. So then when you add things on top of that are a little bit more unsettling maybe, like the fact that all the Muppets are being lied to for the whole film. That's not a nice thing to base a whole film off, but it is true. So when you add all that together, it gives off a much more different tone to the 2011 film. And I think that's probably why maybe some people maybe didn't like it. There's just a whole different tone to this film, a whole different tone. Another thing to point out is the humour. The humour is a lot more, adult's not the right word, but mature, because, I don't know, it fits the tone a bit better. In the Muppets 2011 film, there's a lot of, more kiddie gags and things that are more visually amusing and things like that. But in Muppets Most Wanted, it's more subtle things, witty humour, jokes and stuff. And, I mean, when you got Ricky Gervais on there, the king of, sarcastic humour and stuff like that, it's just a different type of humour. And I don't know, maybe, this is up to opinion here, I don't know if that works with the Muppets. I don't know. I thought it was funny, but I think if Jim were to see this film, I think he would have liked it quite a lot. I just like to put that out there. But it's a different type of humour. It's a lot less childish. Miss Piggy seems more of a fleshed out character. Even though in both of these films, I'm going to say this now, she feels like a very 2D character. She's there what she's there for. She's not interested in anyone else. She just wants to sing her song, which is something they've always done with Miss Piggy, but it just feels like that's it, and that's literally it for Miss Piggy. So yeah, and Miss Piggy isn't a highlight of this film at all. She usually is, quite a big predominant part in all these films, but she doesn't seem to have a big part. It's really just about Kermit on this, and I think that was a risky choice because, as we know, this was the last film Steve did, so the fact that they felt confident to let Steve carry that film, because Kermit is truly the main focus in this film. I just think that's an interesting choice, and that was the last time they did that, so there's a couple things to think about there. And Steve is quoted as saying that, I think he said the Muppet movie, the original one, 79, was his favourite thing to work on as a Muppet film, but he said that this is a close second, something like that. So I think that's interesting because it ended up not being that successful. So that's another interesting thing. Maybe Steve's views on where the Muppets should be going just didn't align with everybody else's. Interesting things to think about. Now, the next thing I'd like to talk about, which is linked to that, Steve said he really liked the action sort of sequences. There's a lot of sort of retro James Bondy looking sort of sequences in here, and it's very action filmy. Now, the Muppets haven't really done that. We certainly haven't had that, as like a serious thing. Kermit's played these sort of, I don't know, inspector or, whatever it is, agent people, but this is really like the Muppets doing an action film in some of these sequences, and there's real heartfelt emotions in a lot of it, and that's something we haven't really seen from them. There's flipping Muppets holding guns and stuff. That's not really happened a whole lot, and when it has, it hasn't seemed anywhere near as serious. It's just been a throwaway comedy gag. In the Muppets at Walt Disney World, Kermit holds a gun and he's covering his eyes the whole time. And in this thing, he gets a gun pointed straight at his face and he doesn't even flinch. I don't know. Maybe they just thought the Muppets would go straight into that action world a bit more flawlessly. But I don't think that's another layer of that unsettlingness. A shot with Miss Piggy and a frog next to her holding a gun. There's just something a little bit unsettling about it, which is also, as every layer of this is a bit of unsettlingness, it's also a layer of humour. So that you love it or hate it. I think that's interesting. So yes, ponder on that, folks. Another thing I'd like to touch on is, I think this is probably one of the only Muppet films that the bad guy, the real bad guy, is a Muppet. Usually you got Muppet sidekicks for a bit of comic relief, but it really feels like Constantine steals the show. I mean, Ricky Gervais says that in every one of his interviews, that the frog steals the show, but it really does feel like Constantine is quite scary. He's a genuine. He has a threat element to that, to his character. He's very, he can get a bit deep, and I don't know. It's a bit hard for the Muppet fans maybe to hate against a character because that's a Muppet. A bad guy that's a Muppet. That's something we haven't had to sort of do before. So there's another thing to think about, because really, it's really easy to hate the humans and love the cute little puppets. But when you're hating one of the puppets because they've done some horrible things, that's a whole different little world and universe that we've never really looked into. So I think that's an interesting thing to think about as well. Now, another thing is, well, they made all the jokes about it being a sequel and not being quite as good. That's just a little throwaway thought. But on a serious note, I do feel like the Muppets, as characters, the ensemble, felt a bit isolated. They would do these little group shots where there would be, I don't know, one or two of them, but there was only a few scenes where they really felt like the Muppet gang feeling, that unbeatable chemistry sort of thing. Because there's just some really weird groupings when you have characters all in one shot. You have one shot where it's Pepe, Janice, and Ralph, and Rizzo, Walter, and Scooter. I don't know. There's just weird little groupings of characters that, I don't know, it just feels weird, and they feel a bit isolated. Like, the Muppets don't seem to be much of a family in this film. They always go on about being a family in the 2011 movie, but in this one, they don't even trust each other, and they're confused when Walter, Fozzie, and Animal leave, and, Ralph makes a joke about them just introducing Walter to the gang, and then he leaves, and everyone just sort of gets on with it and does more shows. I don't like that. I wish there was a bit more family into it, because it's their arguments and stuff. That's what, those relationships that get tangled up in each other, that's what ultimately brings them closer together. But in this film, it just seems to bring them further apart, to the point that Kermit gets chucked in a gulag, and the rest of them just carry on with their daily lives, not realising that Kermit's, a bit different. And you think about the other films like Muppets Take Manhattan, we see Kermit with all the emotions there, and the gang are really affected by that. But in this one, I don't know, the Muppets seem a bit dumb and a bit numb to the realistic world around them, which doesn't pair up with the realistic cinematography and all the sets. So I don't know, it's like a weird mixture. Like, the characters are still in a bit of a cartoony world, like the 2011 film, but the rest of them, like Kermit, all the human actors, and Constantine, are in a very real deep world where they're pondering deep thoughts, while Kermit's in a prison cell. It's just weird and interesting decisions that were made for that film, but ultimately I do love it. I think it's a better Muppet film, and there's great moments with the Muppets in it, when Miss Piggy sings her song and the Muppets join in at the end with, like, the whole ensemble cast. That's just beautiful. So there's some really, really good moments in this film, and I ultimately do like it more than the 2011 movie. But I just thought it's interesting. I'm trying to figure out why people didn't like it as much. Simply, I think it's because promotional stuff was better for the 2011 film, and this 2014 film, there was just a different vibe that people weren't ready and expected for. It's not something the Muppets have never done before. They've done darker things before. Christmas Carol was considered, quite, darker compared to the things they'd been doing before. Brian Henson said that before, and Disney weren't ready to maybe step into that territory of the characters, but we know it works because Muppet Christmas Carol was a huge success. And I think a Great Muppet Caper, there's a great sense of reality in that. We're in the Happiness Hotel, the characters are broke. We see these real sort of world situations happen, and I'm really glad that Muppets Most Wanted did that, because in 2011 film it's just, everything's wonderful at the end, and everything's happy, and we're all going to get along, and we all missed each other really, and I don't know, they never felt like anything deep was actually going to happen, when these characters can really go to those depths, and they can argue with each other, and Miss Piggy argues in this film, and I think that's something the performers all know that really, did a big deal for the Muppets originally, was those relationships that caused arguments and stuff. Don't shy away from that. It's funny, it's gold, it's funny. So anyway, that's my thoughts on why it wasn't as popular. Obviously we knew that something wasn't quite right with Steve's version of Kermit there, and the Hensons certainly felt that, and I think this film would have affected that as well, because Kermit's very different in this one, especially at the end when they're doing all the action sequences. Kermit's feels quite different there. So, there's lots of things that this movie did, but overall, it's a great watch. It's fun. It doesn't feel like it drags on for too long. The Muppets don't dwell on their own nostalgia. They're trying to do something new. I like it. It was exciting. Better than the 2011 film. But there you go. Let me know what you think down in the comments below, because it is an interesting topic and something that could be added upon a lot. So there we go. I love this film. I've had a deep connection with it. They filmed the train station sequences in a train station nearby, not too far away from where I am in England. So I as a child, I got to go into the red steam train that Bulgar drives, and I the first thing I saw in a theatre with the Muppets. So it's very cool. It holds a special place in my heart. It's a great film. Go and watch it if you haven't already. But let me know what you think about it down below. See you later.